evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you're in a position where you need to take a seat, feel free to take a seat, stand if you want, but we are going to get started. All right, well, good evening. I'm glad everybody's here. This is a great showing. Always an impressive number. I can't imagine that there's anybody left out in town right now. But as you remember from last year, my name is Scott Sawyer. I'm the project manager for the Army Corps of Engineers on this particular project. We have a lot of people. We have a lot of technical team members. We have the people from Jacobs Engineering here tonight as well. They will be doing the majority of the presentation. And our acting commander, Colonel Malou, is here. Would you like to say something?
Hey, thanks, Scott. Hey, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Natalie Malou. I'm the deputy commander for the past year, acting commander right now. And I just want to say thank you for all coming out. There were a couple people left on the street when we drove through, so I appreciate everyone coming here tonight to talk about something that we take seriously. You know, my team here from the Corps of Engineers has worked diligently, had numerous engagements, so I'm glad to see follow-up. I'm glad to see tons of people here. There was barely any parking left in the parking lot. Yeah, it's very encouraging to see the amount of participation, and so we're glad to hear from you tonight and to answer and field your questions. And just so a few opening remarks. Okay, so since the last meeting, which I believe Colonel Navarro attended, we have piloted 3 different ways to attack the contaminants, TCE, right? And we've seen success in those methods, right? And so that's kind of the how. And my team's going to go over the technical details of those initiatives, right? And how do we reduce the TCE in the ground? And then, you know, what we're also continuing to work on is where, right? So where, because you can't obviously attack all at once in a large area of contaminants, right? And so our team's going to brief on our groundwater imaging and another initiative on, hey, how do we attack it and where to be most effective, right? And that takes time, and we have, you know, a process at which we have to do it. And so I hope tonight just being able to explain to you the how and the where in the process, a little bit of the process is will increase our understanding in the community so that we can work to a good solution together. And then I also just want to be direct right up front, you know, with the commander's comments that we did detect above federal levels of TCE at a landowner's property, and we immediately notified him. In that landowner, and we are providing temporary water to that landowner and developing a further plan of action on how we're going to mitigate those effects, right? So just up front, and so we are doing things, okay? We are putting plans in action, and appreciate you guys here tonight. Depending on time and how long this goes, I may be available at the end to stay around and you know, talk with you, answer some questions, but I definitely look forward to the discussion and the information exchange tonight. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Colonel Malou, for that. You know, I have worked a lot of places in my life, and there's one thing that I can say for sure. Since I've worked here, I have never had consistently high-performing, just amazing leadership as we have here, and it is just great to see them coming back year after year. We are lucky that this problem, you know, this is a terrible problem.
You're lucky. We don't feel lucky.
No, sorry. It's just a good group of people to have working this problem. It's not going to make it go away, but just know that we have people that care up and down the chain. Okay, last year. Not sure.
Put it on the holder if you would.
Put it there. Oh, let's see. Does that work?
And I'll see if it works.
All right. Well, all right. We'll see. All right. Over the last year, we've had things happen. We've had positive things happen. All right. That's not going to work. I was going to say, in the last year, we have had positive things. like she said, we've had 3 pilot studies conclude with some positive results. Those will be explained in Jacob's team earlier. We've got the vapor intrusion study that's about to kick off. We've got people that have volunteered their homes for that.
You need to use the mic, or you don't get back to the back.
All right. Well, the mic's been pretty spotty, but I'll keep trying. All right, so in the last year, like I said, things have been happening. The 3 pilot studies, the vapor intrusion is about to start, and we just contracted a high-resolution groundwater study. Those things will all be happening fairly soon. We cannot stress enough that we cannot do a lot of these things without rights of entry. If there's an area or there's a home that we need, there's property that we need to do testing or sampling on, we just encourage you to be a part of this. And as a part of this, we encourage you to get your right of entry signed and let us do the work that we need to do. So, we're going to start this with the technical team from Jacobs. So, I start, Tony, and you can introduce your crew.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be a couple slides down. So welcome to the public meeting. It's also the open house for the annual update for the former Offutt Air Force Base Atlas V Missile Site 3. Okay, this is some of the items that we'll be discussing. So we'll go through the introductions, the property and site history. We'll also talk a little bit about the remedial investigation review, some of the upcoming and ongoing activities, and then we'll also have a discussion and provide contact information. All right, so with the Army Corps Omaha District, we have Scott Sawyer as the project manager. We actually have Carl Harms as the engineer. Joe Plackey has since transitioned. And then we've got Jeremy Davis as the geologist, Tony Sedlicek as the chemist, and Isaac Dalkey as the risk assessor. We also have at the Public Affairs Office, we have Mackenzie Leonard. And then with our regulatory agency, we've got Matt Gresh with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. All right, as a contractor to the Omaha District, again, like Scott sort of mentioned, we are Jacobs. We've got myself, Tony Swerzik, I'm the project manager. Mike Perlmutter, he is our senior engineer. And then we also have Simon Klein as our senior geologist. And then Rosa Esquivel, she is our public involvement specialist. Okay, I think at least 50 of you folks got a hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation. We do have an acronym list. Just being a consultant, we use a lot of acronyms, so if there's an acronym that I use, you can just reference the slide. Okay, getting into the site history. Again, this was a former Atlas V missile site. It was operational between 1961 and 1964, and it encompassed roughly 289 acres. In 1971, following the decommissioning of the missile site, it was conveyed to Iowa Western Community College. And then in 1988, the site structures were demolished. You will see remnants of the concrete pads of the former launch and service buildings. And then in 2006, the property was sold to private investors, and you can see 129 acres were sold as residential lots, and then 160 acres was sold for agricultural purposes. And then you can see we've got essentially a typical construction or layout of one of the launch and service buildings. You can see that the missile actually tilted up. It was not underground. And then a typical Atlas V missile engine. Okay, continuing with the site history. Again, this is the configuration of the former launch and former missile sites during its operational period. We have 2 launch and service buildings that house the ICBMs, the missiles, on what we call the Eastern Ridge. And then on the Western Ridge, we had another launch and service building, along with a pump house and a power station. Then we had some ancillary buildings throughout the site. These red arrows that you see here, these represent the flame pits for each of the launch and service buildings. So following readiness exercises, the missiles were essentially cleaned out using trichloroethane, or TC, which is a chlorinated solvent. And that liquid waste is, even though we don't have any reports or documentation on this, but the liquid waste likely was disposed into the flame pits, and then from the flame pits, it's suspected that the TCE leached from the soil into the groundwater. And you can see that essentially the flame pits are located on the west side of the launch and service buildings, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but you'll be able to see kind of that. When we look at the plumes, you'll see that that's likely the case where liquid waste was dumped into the flame pits and discharged to the west. Continuing on with the site history, 2013, TC was detected in a few residential wells that were sampled at that time. That is what triggered the CERCLA process, so the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act process. And the first thing that was completed was a preliminary assessment to determine the path forward for environmental investigations. And you can see up here in the top right corner from 2015 to 2016, some of the environmental investigations as well as monitoring programs that have been conducted that were either completed or are ongoing. So we've got residential well sampling. We also have installation and operation and maintenance of carbon treatment systems as part of an interim corrective action for groundwater. And again, this is one of the ongoing sampling programs. One of the time-critical removal actions was for PCBs, or polychlorinated biphenyls, in soil. This was previously completed. The PCBs in soil was related to the former transformer pads that were located on the property during its operational history. And then we get into the phase remedial investigation. So essentially that was completed between 2015 and 2023. And that was the majority of the environmental investigations as part of the phase remedial investigation. And then we also completed, as the commander indicated, a series of pilot studies, which we'll get into in just a little bit. And then we also have routine monitoring well sampling. This is also ongoing. This is part of our semi-annual groundwater sampling that we do at our permanent monitoring well locations. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the feasibility study. Again, this is part of the CERCLA process that you can see here. We've got a diagram of the CERCLA process where you begin with the preliminary assessment. We already talked about the remedial investigation. And again, we're currently where we're at is the feasibility study. And then you can see the steps following the feasibility study. Okay, with that, I will turn things over to Simon, our geologist.
Thanks, Dougie, and thanks for coming. Every time we seem to come here, we have an increase in attendance, and I think that's fantastic to see all the new faces. So some of us will be previously from last year and the year before, but it's sometimes good to have a refresher about the remedial investigation and the subsurface that we had here in Iowa. So the key objectives for a remedial investigation is basically what we're talking about. Where is that contamination? Where is it spatially? Where is it vertically? On the surface water, subsurface groundwater, etc. So attacking this problem, we looked at, we were in the beautiful Loess Hills area of Iowa, and the general geology in this area would be wind-blown loess. This is the top layer here. This will creates that topography that we see. That's basically ground-up rock flow from glaciation, continental glaciation over millions of years, and it's wind-blown, and it's placed over here on this east side of the Missouri River. Underneath that would be a glacial till. That's going to be a very catch-all term that could have a grain size going from a truck to a clay particle. It's very, very mixed up and can be very, what we call, heterogeneous. Below that, we would have, in lots of parts of this part of Iowa, we would have Dakota Dakota sandstone. This is a regionally important aquifer, so it's something to definitely be aware of and protect. And then, so that's what our initial conceptual site model was as we went about looking at this problem. The RI also comes with risk assessments, assessing that vapor intrusion and looking at the remaining sort of PCBs and the soils from those previous TECRAs. So some findings from the remedial investigation was that we have the loss is still present, but that glacial till is now subdivided into two very, very different units. On the top here we have is what we call a clay diamicton, that is a glacial material that's been ground down. It's basically where these large ice sheets have bulldozed over and compacted the ground, leaving these clays. And then also, that's going to be kind of what we call an aquitard. It's going to prevent water flow movement down in certain areas where it's a significant thickness. And then below that, we have these fluvial deposits. That will be like if you go to Alaska and you see a glacier and you see the streams coming out the bottom of that and sand and gravel. That's going to be that material there. So this is a fantastic material for cleaning a well. It's going to be transmissive. It's going to contain groundwater that can be used and extracted from well water. But along with that transmissive material, unfortunately, it also leads to that contamination. Once it's there, it's able then to transport off the site. So we also thought we were underlain by Dakota sandstone, this whole area. It turns out north of the site, where we have lower elevations, we have Marmaton mudstones, an old, very old formation that is hundreds of feet thick. Again, that's an aquitard. So that Dakota formation that we might have been seeing in old well drilling logs is absent north of the site. So continuing on with this, and we have plenty of posters over there that we can look at and talk to me about this afterwards if interested. That TC plume then leaves off-site and moves approximately close to into the Boyer River Valley, approximately 2.8 miles. So these don't flow in it's sort of definitely like underground river. These are kind of like lobes as they're moving through those sands and gravel, so that's fluvial system. So they're occurring at different depths. So it's not just a sandbox and water's flowing through that sandbox. There's clay lenses in there. There's coarser gray materials where the groundwater moves more rapidly. And so we're not looking just spatially, we also need to know vertically. And we're seeing these lobes coming off the site to the north in different elevations. We can find that out by installing monitoring wells at different elevations in those fluvial aquifers. So it really helped hone down where that contamination is, how it's leaving the site, what elevation it's leaving the site, and that will help us subsequently figure out how to clean it up. So my job is to delineate this stuff, and then we bring in the engineers to clean it up. Key findings from the soil. This is, from the TECRA, this is Meriwether Lewis Lane. On top there, this is just south of LSB number 1. They were doing some PCB sampling down there, and so we were sampling there, and we did find that one detection above the EPA screening levels, but it's currently underneath the road. So while the road is there, there is no exposure to that. Nothing can get to it. It can't be spread. So currently, there's no further soil investigation needed because it's essentially been delineated, and where we found the exceedance, it's underneath a road. From the human health risk assessment, we found that we have exceedances in the acceptable risk for current and future residents and shallow groundwater, so that's going to be the groundwater in the loss, and also there's that deeper water bearing, that shallow intermediate, so that's the shallow zone. The intermediate water bearing zone is going to be those fluvial deposits. So that's where we see our receptors. Potentially future construction work is in the soil. If we're digging near the source areas as we go about doing potentially some kind of remediation there might be an exposure there, but it's primarily in the groundwater. Soil vapor, we'll discuss that, Mike will discuss that later on in the talk. And then we also mentioned that soil risk estimates for cattle, beef consumers, that is currently at no further risk. So that's not unacceptable. So along with the human health risk goes the ecological risk assessment. So that'll be for actually not necessarily cattle. Cattle is fitted in another category, This would be like game, this would be, invertebrates in ponds, etc. We're not seeing any, currently not seeing any risk associated with Site 3 here, basically because where the contamination lies at most of this area is underground, that cattle can't really access where the contamination is, and where we do know that we have cattle supply wells, those are currently clean. So currently, nothing to worry about on this, but something to monitor potentially in the future. But currently, no further assessment is needed. So with that, I'm going to move to Mike. He's going to discuss about the pilot updates, and I'll be back in a little bit.
Hi everyone, thanks. So with the site characterized, my job is to help figure out how to clean up the contamination. And the way that we start with this, because this is a relatively complex site, is to start with some pilot studies. So we start small and then use that information to develop our full strategy for the site. So as I introduced in previous meetings, we conducted 3 different pilot studies to look at different technologies applied in different parts of the site. You can see on the screen that we targeted 2 of the pilot studies in the greatest concentrations in the loess, and then we did a 3rd pilot study located in the fluvial formation. Pilot studies 1 and 2 both looked at zero valent iron, and I'll explain the chemistry of that in a second, but 2 different application methods. And then the 3rd pilot study used something called bioelectrochemical remediation, which is just using electricity to change the geochemistry of the groundwater, and I'll explain that a little more later. So let's get into pilot study 1. So this is an application where we injected ZVI, zero valent iron, via hydraulic fracturing. The reason why we like zero valent iron at this site is that it slowly rusts in the environment. Once you get into groundwater, it rusts like it just does above ground when it rains. And what happens is it releases electrons. Those electrons help remove the chlorine atoms from the TCE, and it makes the TCE less toxic. So what happens is you end up with ethane, ethene, and acetylene, which are low toxicity chemicals. One of the things that we particularly like about ZVI is it doesn't move down gradient. So one of the things we're interested in is putting these chemicals in the ground to treat the TCE, but then not make the drinking water worse down gradient, because sometimes you can use remediation reagents that could have secondary impacts on drinking water quality. So we like that it sort of stays put where we treat it. The reason why we chose hydraulic fracturing is that the loess is a difficult material to inject into, and by using high pressure, we're able to propagate out the ZVI particles into the formation so they can react. And that's the process that we use for pilot study 1. The way that the fracturing works, and again, we're just focusing on the top 50 feet of the loess. We basically suspend the iron in a gel, and then we advance the drill rig, which we call a direct push technology, basically push it into the ground. We then use high pressure to inscribe a notch in the soil, and then we pressurize the whole system and push it out into the formation and almost create a bit of a pancake in the formation. And in this case, the way that it works is that we rotate it around a triangle, and in each triangle we went down a little bit further, so you get this sort of overlapping network of these pancakes. So as I mentioned, our pilot study just included 3 injection points. A full scale will be significantly larger. But the idea is to create these radii of influence, where you have these overlapping iron injections to treat the target area. In this case, we injected 6 fractures per boring. So if you basically, as we push down every 3 feet, we injected the iron, and then we rotated among the 3 locations. In this case, between the 3 locations, we injected almost 40,000 pounds of zero valent iron. And then we also injected a commercial biomutation culture, so some bacteria that like to degrade TCE. So we're sort of hitting it with belt and suspenders. The surface chemistry of the ZVI reduces it, but also the bugs are helpful too. Just a couple pictures of what it looks like in practice. This is the contractor loading the iron into their injection equipment, and then from there they pressurize it, and it comes out this hose, and it's attached to the drilling locations I mentioned before. This is the application of that kind of viscous material that suspends the iron, and then this is just the whole setup. This is the drill rig they used to push down the rods. And we were able to do this in about a week. That's how long it took for these 3 locations. So ultimately, we were very happy with the results. This well, which was our main target area, had concentrations of TCE decreased by 99%. And that we saw that happen within the first 3 months. And the entire pilot study was a year, and those concentration reductions were sustained. So we viewed this technology as something that we could consider for a full-scale application moving forward. Pilot Study 2 was a similar chemistry as Pilot Study 1, but we did it a little bit differently with the application. In this case, because the fluvial aquifer that Simon was talking about is much more permeable and that you can get things to flow into it, we're able to use wells to pump the iron into the ground. So rather than pressurizing it with hydraulic fracturing, we're able to inject it directly into wells. And this is helpful for us to address the contamination in the fluvial, which is much more widespread, and we can use wells to do that. So this is the setup for our pilot study for this application. It's a little bit different. We mixed our chemicals at the surface and then injected them into wells located. This is our injection manifold, and then you can see them attached to these various wells here. The pressure was about 50 to 100 pounds per square inch, whereas the hydraulic fracturing was well over 100, if not higher as well. In this case, the injection wells are a little bit closer together than the hydraulic fracturing. You can't quite get as good a radius of influence as the hydraulic fracturing. You can see these are a lot deeper. We were down to 109 feet with these applications, whereas the hydraulic fracturing, if you remember, were in the 20 to 40 foot depth. Now, one of the things we learned about this site, and that's part of pilot studies, is sometimes you learn what you can't do. And we did find a little bit of challenges with injections with these wells. Because the iron is still a solid rather than a liquid, it can fall out of solution and precipitate. And then we did find that when we stopped and started the pumping, we did clog the wells. And as a result, we only got about a third of our target volume in the ground. So we did learn some things from this that can help us with the full-scale design. But even despite only getting a third of the material in the ground, we saw very good results. If you see here, this is a baler that we use to collect groundwater, and if you can see a little bit of gray coloring down here, this is from the well in the middle of our triangle, and we're able to see some of these iron particles in the well. So even with the lower dose, we're able to see some of our chemical reagents in the well to treat. And as a result, here we also saw a 99% reduction in the TCE, very fast reaction. So we were up to close to 1,000 micrograms per liter, and in some cases we were below detection limits. And it helped for the duration here. So another encouraging result here, we have some lessons to learn about the injection, which we'll address during the design process. So finally, our last process that we were testing is quite a bit different from the ZVI injection. This is an application where we install electrodes in the ground, attach electricity to them, and then we run power between the electrodes. And we're talking about residential power, not a lot. You know, the amount of power it takes to really light up a light bulb. But what happens is that electricity goes through the formation, and it changes the chemistry of the ground surface, and it allows natural processes to treat the TCE. We really like this because you don't have to inject any chemicals. It works in a range of geology, so it could work in the loess and the fluvial formation. And it's potentially a low-cost solution for the site, and it results in degradation. So it seemed to be an attractive approach for this site. You can see here a fairly small application. We have a triangle of our electrodes. You can see the wires attached to our electrodes. This is one of our electrodes. You just feed it down one of our wells, and this is just our power junction box that we use. 15 to 50 volts, pretty low, just 1.6 amps. And then we periodically switch the direction of the power, because what happens if you leave it one direction too long, you get some precipitation forming on the electrodes. So we want to make sure that it changes and that doesn't happen. So what we learned with this particular application is a good bit slower than the zero-valent iron. The iron worked almost immediately. Here we saw 65% reduction in this particular well. What was interesting that we saw here is that while we saw the TC reduce, and I know it's a little hard to see on this map, but it did reduce by 65%. We did see some of the daughter products increase. So the way that TCE reduces it, as it loses the chlorines, you end up with trichloroethylene and then dichloroethylene and vinyl chloride. You progressively lose the chlorine atoms, and we saw that here. So one of the challenges we have here as part of the full-scale design is how do we predict how long it might take for this technology to actually complete the treatment? We see good evidence of it working, and what our job is to figure out is how long it might take to work. So that's one of the things we have to do as we head into the feasibility study. But just to sum up, we feel like all three of these technologies were effective enough to include in our feasibility study. We like hydraulic fracturing, we like the injection wells with some adjustments into our application, and we're going to graduate them to the feasibility study. We'll look at different types of ways to get those materials into the ground, but again, they are going to be important parts of the way we figure out how to clean the site. And I'll talk a little bit more about the feasibility study coming up. But those are the pilot studies we completed since we last talked, and I think we've got some good information about how to start addressing this point. And with that, I'll bring Simon back up here.
Thanks, Mike. So looking at the residential treatment systems, with that corrective action, we have 140 plus drinking water wells sampled in a roughly 3-mile radius of the site. And that sampling frequency depends on right decision logic, concentration levels in those wells, and of course that approved right of entry. Several wells have TCE detections, and then the GAC treatment system is installed to treat TCE daughter products. The quarterly treatment system, sampling, and O&M. So this is the systems that are in place for both the GAC system. Sampling results is 14 residential wells of TCE over that MCL of 5 micrograms per liter or parts per billion. 10 residential wells with detections but less than that 5 parts per billion, and then 118, so the vast majority of the wells have undetectable TCE concentrations. And we have those, we can, a lot of audience members were enjoying the figures over there. That's what we have. We have a 2017 and a 2025 map. So that's what we have here. We have on the left we have 2017, and on the right we have 2025. So now we've started to, as we've been collecting a larger network of wells for a period of 8-9 years now, we're starting to get a good body of data going about where this plume is, where it is in the subsurface, where it's hanging out. So what we have here is we have the two different, so you can see that the network has increased over time. We are now looking further north, and there's going to probably be additional wells over here near the Boy River Valley that weren't being sampled before. In 2017, we were seeing again primarily along Euclid Creek. That's primarily where the residential well exceedances were located. And then we also have some spots kind of just to the north of there. Some exceedances, but primarily these are going to be detections between 0 and 5 parts per billion. And we also had some kind of more randomized detections of TCE outside of the area. Going back to 2025, and we basically transposed those same. We have not moved these shapes. So this ellipses, the circle, this shape here, this blob here, that's the exact same blob that we've transposed over on 2025 to show that the plume is really kind of staying. We know where we want to focus our efforts. We want to focus it on the site, where the source areas, but we also want to be looking down gradient here, these residential wells along Euclid Creek. We kind of have a bedrock low there that's been probably working that area for millions and millions of years. It's allowed for those fluvial deposits to deposit in there, leading to a good aquifer for a residential well. But unfortunately, that's also that transmissive material that the site and the TCE has moved through. But it's, as you can see, it really has stayed in the same spot. So we can look at the monitoring well results. So this is going to be our monitoring wells that have been installed during a remedial investigation. So the graphs here are going to be TCE on the vertical and then time on the horizontal, with an EPA screening level of about 5 parts per billion located there on the graphs. So let's start off in the source area, LSB number 3 and number 2. and you can see kind of what general trends. Kind of, we can have a steady eddy here at 60, kind of in the main plume axis as it's still on site. As it's leaving the site, it's got a bit more variability. We'll see a bit more some variability in other slides. 7i, that was the pilot study number 2 that Mike was talking about. So we had consistently readings of 1,000 parts per billion. Now we've had that big drop roughly to the MCL from that pilot study. Remember, that's in a very limited area though. And then also we are noticing further down gradient, up gradient I should say, of where we think the main source for this contamination plume is. We have 11i up gradient, and that is actually raising. It was above the MCL, but it has now increased. We're looking at that, say the plume footprint, so the area where, spatial area where the plume is located hasn't changed, but some of the concentrations are maybe moving around. We've got transducers in some of these wells, and we're seeing that we've had a 10-foot drop in groundwater from long-term drought conditions here. So that might be messing kind of with the plumbing. So the footprint's kind of staying the same where the plume is located, but maybe some of the concentrations have a bit more variability. And that's something we definitely want to be paying attention to and we'll be looking at going forward. Now let's move further north into Euclid Creek. So we're dropping from roughly, we're going from 1,000 to 100 parts per billion, now we're going into 100 to 10 parts per billion. And we have kind of a gamut here of what you might expect. You have at 67, you have kind of a steady decline. You have a very stable one here at the 69 cluster, and then 70 is kind of all over the place. There's a lot of variability. That's probably most likely due to whenever we're sampling. We might be sampling when a residential well is pumping. And so, you think the residential wells, there's a lot of them, and they're pumping, and they're going to be moving that plume around at different times. Again, the footprint staying the same, the concentrations might have some variability. And then looking at the plume toe, or the front of it, that's as we leave Euclid Creek and getting into that Boyer River Valley, we're seeing, so notice those concentrations are still dropping, although we kind of have 76i right there, kind of at the head of Euclid Creek. We have consistent concentrations between 10 and 100 parts per billion. So that's kind of that main axis as it leaves Euclid Creek. Closer towards the Boyer River Valley, we have a residential well and a monitoring well there. It's kind of hanging around, pretty steady, parts per billion around the MCL. And then further north, although we got that new exceedance detection in this kind of area of the north, but generally these are kind of either non-detect or they're going from 0 to the MCL, kind of bouncing around. So that's, we want to show kind of like nothing's really particularly increasing, we just have some general stability of the plume. So with that, we're going to, as Scott mentioned earlier, we have some, want to kind of focus in on more of the source areas to attack. So we have a bit more additional high-resolution site characterization, primarily looking at LSB, Water Surface Building Number 3. We want to kind of look at that using existing technologies that we use at the site for characterization. We've used what we call membrane interface probe. Basically goes down and measures the soil gas at depth, and it collects that information as it goes down, tells us where that TCE is vertically, and also some other geophysical techniques. The problem being that, see, like pilot test number 2 here, you're seeing that's where that 7i, where we had that 1,000 parts per billion, now dropped down to the MCL. Currently, we don't have access to that. So, kind of a key area where we want to be focusing our investigations and our studies, we currently don't have access. So that is something that, as we move forward and we want to optimize locations and where we want to actually really clean this up, and it might affect time frame, these rights of entry are really going to potentially be to our advantage if they're opened up. So that's where we're at. And we're also going to have some temporary monitoring wells. We want to make sure that we have a good vertical delineation of some of these plumes as they're leaving the site. That's going to help tell Mike and the engineers where we want to focus our efforts, where we want to clean it up as these lobes are moving. And so these results will be considered for the Site 3FS. With that, back to Mike.
So we have a little more going going on right now to help us understand our risks and how we can clean up this site, and we're doing a vapor intrusion investigation. So if you remember when Simon was introducing the risk, one of the things that was identified during the end of the remedial investigation was that there was a potential for vapor intrusion risk at the site. So what we are implementing right now is an actual vapor intrusion mitigation for the site to see if there is actual a risk pathway. And ultimately what we're trying to figure out is, does the TC in the groundwater volatilize and come up into structures at the site? So what we're doing is doing a building survey to understand how the structures are constructed, occupant usage information, looking at potential VI pathways, also identifying if there's potential background sources of VOCs, paint thinners and so forth that could contribute to detections at the site. What we're going to do is at a few properties install and sample 2 semi-permanent subslab vapor probes, and I've got some pictures of that in a second. Really what we want to do is kind of go to the bottom of the structure, right where the foundation meets the ground, and understand the concentrations of TC that might be below the slab of the building. We'll also collect some indoor and outdoor samples. They help us understand if there's a complete pathway at the site. We'll sample for VOCs and we'll compare them to the federal standards for that. And then ultimately all this is going to feed into the feasibility study as well. So it's just a series of photographs of some other sites that we have done. This is an application where we're basically drilling through the foundation to install our point. And then these are the subslab vapor probes. There's a couple of different shots of them, but they're very small. We put them in the concrete. In some cases, you could even put them under carpet. You don't even see them until we need to sample them. This is a setup of our sampling approach, and when we're in the house very briefly, we've got a pump, some gauges, and our sample container, and then we send that off to the laboratory for analysis. But this allows us to understand the quality of the vapor underneath the building as well. So that is going to be ongoing, and I think it's going to start towards the end of this month at several structures that are located along the main axis of the plume. And I've been talking about the feasibility study a lot. It's a very important document for transitioning into the remedy of the site. So this document is going to integrate all the pilot study information. It's also going to look at some other technologies that we have not tested that we understand to be effective at this site. We're going to integrate some of the extra work that Simon is doing in the source areas and then the vapor intrusion work. And then also all the RI investigation, the investigation that we collected over the years, is all tied together in this document. And what I do and the rest of the engineering team does is come up with solutions for the site. We come up with a number of alternatives. We look at a number of criteria to help kind of rank them and figure out what makes the most sense, which ones work the best, which ones have the greatest impact on the community. And we look at implementability, how hard is it to build, and then we look at cost too. At that point, we're going to look at for state and community input, so you guys will have an opportunity to weigh in on what we plan to do. And then ultimately, the selected remedy gets placed in the proposed plan, which you'll have another opportunity to comment on, and then ultimately the record of decision that really allows us to begin the remedy implementation at the site. So this is the process that is ongoing right now. We're in the process of building the feasibility study, and all this information we're collecting is going to be very helpful for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tony to talk a little bit about rights of entry again.
All right. As Scott mentioned, right of entry is critical for us to gain access to the property in order to continue our monitoring program, to collect groundwater samples from the permanent monitoring wells, to collect samples from residential wells as well as the GAC treatment systems, also to operate and maintain those systems, and as well as the high-rise site characterization and the vapor intrusion investigation. We essentially need access in order to do those things and then move forward with, if there is a corrective action, then we'll have access to those properties where we can actually remedy the situation. If you haven't already done so, I know, Scott, you've been working with real estate to either renew ROEs that are set to expire or a change of ownership that requires a brand new right of entry. The Army Corps will make contact with with those property owners just to make sure that we've got everything in order so we can continue the monitoring program and any further investigations, like I said, and in the future corrective actions. Okay, we'll get into the Q&A just a little bit. If you haven't already grabbed one, we may already be out, but we had a stack of comment cards. If you have any comments, feel free to put those on the card and then drop them off in the box. If you're not comfortable with sharing your comments or questions. And then if you have any specific questions or anything that you'd like to discuss, one-on-one, we can do that over the posters after the presentation. Some of the resources and contact information, you can see the information repositories at the Missouri Valley Public Library, right down the street. General inquiries and comments, direct those to Scott Sawyer, the Omaha District Project Manager. And then we also have Matt Gresh's contact information with Iowa Department of Natural Resources. Okay. And this is just reference in case we need to, if we're talking about parts per million regarding TCE. You can see that a 50-gallon barrel, 4 drops of ink equals 1 part per million. Half drop of ink is 1 part per million. So you can see it's a very small amount. A third of a drop of ink equals 1 part per trillion in a 500,000 gallon Olympic pool. So we were talking about, a relatively small volume of TCE that could potentially, affect a greater amount of groundwater. So just something that we put in here in case we needed to reference. But with that, I just want to turn it over to Scott, see if he has any closing remarks. And then we'll take questions.
All right, you guys heard all the things that are going on. This will be over the next 2 years. We will finish up this vapor intrusion study. We'll do the high-resolution groundwater study, all the while continuing the water sampling, the in-home system maintenance, and testing. Each one of these things that's going on, each one of these studies is more information for the feasibility study. Just like anything else in life, the more information you have, the better decision you can make. And it's important that we make the right decision here. So everything going forward, all of this information is going into that. The biggest thing you can do to help with this is, like has been said, give access when we need the access. If we can get and sample your property through an existing, if you're on the program or have been on the program and you don't have an ROE right now, renew your ROE. Call me and we will renew your ROE and get you on that program. The more sampling we have, the more colorful dots that will be for them to work with, and it'll just more information, things work better. The high-res study is up in Cottonwood Estates. That's where that's going to happen. If you live up there and you are contacted, please sign an ROE. Let them on your land. Let them do the study. It benefits everybody. The more information, the better decisions. All the while this is going on, our single most important job is keeping the residents safe from the contamination that is there. And that is the quarterly, semi-annual, and annual testing. If you're on that list and your ROE has expired, let me know. If you stop hearing from us, if you've dropped off the program because you didn't sign an ROE, call me. We'll get you an ROE, we'll get it back. I'll drive it out to you. We'll get it signed, we'll get you back in the program. It is critically important that if you're in that area, that if you've been on the testing program, you continue on the testing program. So we can get between that. We can put a filtration system in if you test to that point. But we need to know and you need to know. If something affects your right of entry, if you've had a right of entry and you moved, something happens, let me know. I do not know who moves. I don't know who goes where. So if anything affects it, you buy a property and they say, hey, you'll get tested every 6 months. That's not going to happen unless you sign an ROE. If you're a new resident, you've not signed an ROE, let us know. If you're an old resident, haven't heard from us for a while, let me know. My phone number's on almost every one of these things out here. And anybody that's been to these last 2 meetings or been here for the last couple of years will know I will answer my phone and I will do my best for you. Guys have any other comments? All right, then we will open this up for question and answer period.
While you're on the topic of ROE, we had a gentleman come to our Harrison County Supervisor meetings and said that he changed the ROE and that there were possibly people in the area that didn't sign the ROE because the ROE was too broad. Can you let the people know that they can possibly change the ROE before they sign it?
Well, the experience we have, there's a couple things going on here, and I'll say that the FUDS program has an ROE that is not supposed to be changed. Is it like just me listening? But we do have a version now that it is strictly for groundwater monitoring, well monitoring, and in-home system maintenance and all that. If you have a problem with your ROE, if you're reading your ROE and there's something in there that you don't like, again, give me a call. Let's talk about it. We'll get to the bottom of what you fear from that, and we will do our best to make it work. I can't write a different ROE for every property. It has to be one uniform thing. That's just how the government works, and that's the rules that we have to follow.
Okay, so you're saying this 2-year, there's another study that's going on for the next 2 years? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
There will be a series of studies, both the vapor intrusion study and the high resolution groundwater study will probably both take place within the next year. And then,
When does the cleanup start? Because the study's been going on for 10 years. At the last couple of these meetings I've been at, this was the hit date of when the cleanup was going to start. And now you're saying another 2 years of studying.
well, yeah, it should be another year to year and a half of actual physical things being done. And then at that point, we'll be at the point where the feasibility study gets finalized according to the CERCLA process, which is the federal law we have to follow. We have to finalize this, and then we go into what's called the proposed plan phase, where we actually come up with a plan, we agree on the plan, there'll be a public meeting, there'll be public input on the plan, and that will happen. When that's done, the last phase is there is a decision document where the person responsible will sign that this is what we're going to do, and at that point, that is usually, that is when the work begins. So yes, there will be.
I think you guys are yanking us along because that is what you guys said this meeting was going to be at the last couple of appointments. Is after this 10 years of studying, this was supposed to be the meeting that you had a plan in place and the cleanup was going to start. So
I understand that it's taken a long time. Look, there's nothing I can do about that. These are federal laws. We don't have the opportunity to just obligate government money outside of the phase that it is supposed to be obligated in. We don't have an option. We have to finish what we're doing now.
there's a law that says that it takes 12 years before you can start putting a plan in place and take action on it.
It is unfortunately not that simple. I would love to talk to you offline. When this is over, let's just meet right over here. Sir?
But sir, I think that's the question everybody here needs to know is when the feasibility, I understand, will start in 2 years. And you go through the feasibility and then you come up with some recommendations. Any idea at all, surely you got some idea when the feasibility study may be done and when some remediation may come. You got some idea.
Yes, the feasibility study will be done
I know that.
inside of 2 years. That'll be finished and signed.
Okay?
After that is when we have the proposed
Is
plan.
that 2 years from now?
That'll be before August 2028, yes.
Right. Then, when, again, that's the question everybody has. When will some remediation alternatives be put out?
Well, that is when we'll have the opportunity. When that report is signed and we move on to the proposed analysis plan, which is a relatively short cycle, then on to the decision document, which is just, again, that's just months. And then that's when that normally begins.
Scott, can I get you to go back to the slide with the 2017 and the 2025 map? The reason why I want you to go back to that is because I went to the Missouri Valley Public Library. The Army Corps put the information in the Missouri Valley Public Library, correct? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then there's some wells. This happens to be 4 wells that have been charted from August 2024 to June 2025 within, it says vicinity, within where Cottonwood Hills is. And I'll just give you the first well. And I'm just going to give the June 2025 amount. So according to the information you guys have in the public library, the highlighted values exceeded the maximum contaminant levels. So there's 4 wells inside the former Site 3 property boundary that, according to your own information, I believe should be red wells, and I'm seeing all green. So well number 0A3-MW-835, on June 2025, you had 13,000 micrograms per liter, which is essentially 13 parts per billion, if I did the math correctly. Is that correct? This is your information at the public library.
Yes.
Yeah, if I can chime in.
So that's 13 ppbs. I don't see any red dots inside of the former Site 3 property boundary. I'm confused why you're only showing green dots when your information at the library very clearly shows some of these should be red dots. Well number 0A3-MW-885 had 13,000 micrograms per liter, which should, if I did the math, 13 parts per billion, and you have it highlighted in your diagram. It says highlighted values exceed the maximum contaminant level. Well number 0A3-MW-845, June 20, 2025, 12,000 micrograms per liter. And well number 0A3-MW-465, June 2025, 17,000 micrograms per liter. All 4 wells you have highlighted values exceeded the maximum contaminant level. So did you run tests and remove all of the TCE out of those 4 wells, or is it human error? There are no red dots within the former Site 3 property bound.
Yeah, so what we're looking at, these are actual residential wells, so these are drinking water wells, not monitoring wells.
Okay, so the monitoring wells, there are red wells that you're monitoring within the missile site.
Yeah, so the wells that you had referenced, they're actually pilot study wells.
Okay.
Yeah, so
that's very confusing to all of us because we're seeing all green dots and we're making life choices on those little dots. And you are not showing all the information. It doesn't seem like you're disclosing everything.
Well, that report that you're referencing is from the pilot study completion report. Those figures show performance monitoring wells. They're not drinking water wells. So if you look over here, if I can point them out. So, yeah, let me.
So my question is, there are red wells within the former Site 3 property boundaries.
Monitoring wells, correct.
Yeah, and so there is TCE in Cottonwood Hills according to the information at the library.
Yes, and on this figure right here.
Okay. I have some other questions, but Scott's voicemail is full, and it has been full all summer. And so I will try to reach out to him again, but you might want to check your voicemail, Scott.
I would just email me, the phone the government gives me has
Oh,
problems.
okay,
But-
okay.
We haven't turned down any emails yet. All right, so you can see, sorry, you have something, sir?
So I've got the original well up there, and I've been living here for 13 years. And drank the water for how many years, with contaminants in it, and now so now you're doing the study, you found out 4 years ago, almost 5 years, back in 2023, that there's vapor showing up. But we're already almost to 2027, and you're now just getting to just do some study about it. Meanwhile, I'm just like I was drinking the water, I'm breathing the air and the vapors. You drag your ass to get stuff done, and meanwhile, people are getting sick, and I get it, it's the government, it's slow, but that doesn't make us feel any better. It doesn't help our lifestyle or anything.
I completely understand that. With the vapor, I think what we're talking about is we have, at the end of the remedial investigation, we found out that there is a potential for vapor. I don't think we know that there is vapor.
When water heats, it turns into vapor. You're breathing in that vapor every time you shower, every time you cook, every time you steam mop something, you're breathing in that water. My water is 16 times the allowable limit, and let's be honest, 0.4 and under is when you have no cancer or infant heart defect risks. So I have it on paper that they knew that there's TC out there in 1994, but it took till 2017, 24 years later. Meanwhile, all of us are buying property, don't know anything about it. We're breathing it in, we're cooking it, we're cleaning it, we're eating our vegetables, I've had 2 dogs die of cancer, I've had a brain tumor removed, I have all sorts of neurological issues. Why did it take so long to tell us? And you're talking about this vapor. Anytime that you heat water, it's vapor. A simple Google search will tell you with TCE, with that water, the minute it heats in the shower, it literally says on Google, take cold showers.
All right. All I can tell you there is, yes, things have taken time. This has not been the fastest thing in the world. The hazard, you say going back to 1994, I do not have that particular thing. It's probably out there somewhere, but 2013 was when we started actually doing the investigation out there. I know that it's a long time. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that is a long time. This is a slow process. I cannot say, if your water, like you say, is contaminated to what, 16 times?
Yes, yep.
Well, you'll have to get with me and give me your address.
I'm in the red.
Okay, so you have a system in your home, right?
I do, but I have
Okay.
2 wells. One I can't even use because if you wash your car, that water's going down in the soil. When the soil turns over, it turns into a VOC. So I have a well down there I can't even use. But before that, I've lived there 20 years. I raised 3 children. You know, you water your pets, your animals. We breathe that in the whole time. I don't understand what the big secret is. And then also too, you're talking about rights of entry. That's awesome. We signed it. You guys come in, you do the testing. The guys that come into my house are amazing, by the way. Super friendly, super nice, super courteous. But my question is, I should have lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you have memory issues from this water.
You got it. You got it, girl. You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
I'm sorry, I still have issues, but, so you guys come into our house, the VOC. You asked us to do the VOC. We asked some questions. You guys said, talk to Jacobs. Talk to Jacobs. They said, well, talk to the Army Corps of Engineers. So then you're like, well, let's just drill 2 holes into your foundation. Okay, but what if that leaks?
Right.
Oh, it shouldn't. Okay, so down the road, a year from after the study, now I have a wet basement where I had a dry basement before. Who has the liability? Nobody can tell us, so we elected not to participate. I would love to participate because I have one of the hottest wells. And I would absolutely love to participate to see, because I can't even climb the stairs without hardly being able to breathe. It feels like an elephant is sitting on your chest. So I would very much love to have the vapors and the gases in my house measured, but it'd be essentially letting you guys experiment on our house with no repercussions.
Is there any, all right, please, go ahead.
Why don't, so I'm our flex counsel, I believe, nice to meet you.
That's amazing, we can talk after, but what about the rest of the people? They're not gonna hear the rest of that conversation.
Can you go up to the microphone, please, so we can hear you?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to yell, I'm just very passionate. I've done a ton of research, I don't know, I urge everyone to do some research. For instance, the percentages, if you have been exposed to TCE, 67% more chance of Parkinson's.
Right.
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. The people who are at Camp Lejeune, which is the same chemical,
Yes.
30 days, some people are there for 30 days, and then 2 decades later, they have all these cancers that they can literally prove was from being stationed at Camp Lejeune. So, in 1982 is when they determined that the TCE was there. You do research on the one over by Des Moines, there's a couple in Nebraska. They've known about it since the 80s and 90s, so wouldn't it make sense if the same degreaser was used at those Army bases or military bases? Why would they not check all of them? Why did it take a person testing their own home to bring this to light?
That's a totally valid question. I can answer the first one about the contractual liability thing.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. You're allowed to speak truth to power. That's why we're here. So I apologize. I speak pretty softly. It's been a problem my entire life.
I don't.
I respect that. You're better than me. When it comes to what you're talking about, I can't give legal advice to the entire room. I can only give it to the agency. What I can say is that those are legitimate questions, and the Army Corps can help you with them. The choice to allow us into your home to do a study is a personal choice. We would love for you to say yes, but if you have concerns, that's exactly what we're here for. Now, I will say that I'm standing before you today. I likely am going to have another attorney with me in the future. I have another role to take, but I care a lot about you. We all do. If you have a concern like that, that's exactly why I would really suggest you get in touch with Scott. One of the reasons I can't give a suggestion to everybody in the room is because everyone's situation is different. And also everyone's house is different, the location is different. And in some cases, the advice that I can give about talking to the PM and what you're saying, I can give my advice to the PM so he can talk with you. I can't necessarily give it directly to you because I'm just not empowered that way. But we can work within the limits that we have to get you the answers that you need. So, again, I'm sorry for talking softly.
And I don't mean to yell at you guys, it's not your problem, you didn't put the TCE there, you're trying to help us, I get that.
You're allowed to speak up, it's okay.
It's, you know, how many umpteen years of this?
Look, this is not something that I'm trying to explain away. I'm not trying to hide anything. Anybody that's talked to me knows I will tell you the truth as best I know it. I cannot tell you that what was done in the past is right and that everything up till now has just been perfect. That would be ridiculous. That is not the truth. It has taken a long time. The problem I face right now is to get money to do something, I have to be in the correct phase of a process. And right now, the phase I'm in does not allow me to go around and start, or me, not just me, does not allow the Corps of Engineers to go around and start trying to fix things. Before the government will give us money, they need to know we have all the information, we have a plan that makes sense, a plan that's signed off by all the smart people, and at that point, and the community has a chance to speak on that plan. It is not quick. I know it's not quick, and it's not going to make anybody happy. I'm not expecting this to make people happy. We're telling you what's going on. We're telling you where we're going next. We're telling you the things that we're trying to do. In your particular situation, if you have a filtration system and you are worried about, if you get the results from that filtration system and it shows anything at all, we'll tweak that. I mean, that can be fixed. But that is not the point. The point is that filtration system is supposed to keep you 100% away from that water.
So do you mean 100% under the 5?
Well,
Because every result that's come back has been higher than 0 after the effluent. It's not 0.
From the effluent, it should be 0.
It's not. It's never been.
I have her test results with me tonight.
Never been.
Her table. It's not 0. After it goes through the filtration system, her test results are not 0.
well, those we'd like to see because those can sometimes be hard to read. So let's make sure we're
Let's
seeing
take a
them.
look at that.
Yeah.
because I-
If you have that, when we're done here, just bring it up to this table, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Who's next, sir?
Where are we at with the RAB process?
Okay, great question. The RAB is, as you know, we have a new commander, Colonel Salt. The RAB is his discretion. It is up to him to make that decision. So when he gets back, he just took over, and he is currently not here. So when he gets back, that's going to be one of the first things we're going to talk to him about, and we're going to get a decision on that, and we will let you know.
So why didn't the previous commander establish the RAB? Because I have seen the applications submitted by previous individuals. This has been going on for quite some time, and it seems like the commanders rotate out about every 3 years, and then the whole process starts off.
Well, this RAB, this last request has been within the last, say, 4 months, 5 months. And the outgoing commander was, I think, wise enough to not saddle the incoming commander with something something he decided on his way out the door to throw on this new commander. That's just not how they treat each other. So this new commander will have the opportunity to read the information, to get briefed on the information, and will have the opportunity to make that decision.
Well, that's understandable.
Okay.
This RAB process was started previously under other commanders. And again, it seems like every 3 years you folks rotate out to your next duty station and we start all over again. So while I understand the professional courtesy, this RAB is not brand new and it predates the last 4 months.
Okay, I personally, in the 3 years I've been a part of this project, I have not seen an application for a RAB. Of course, there's been RAB talk.
I
And that's fine.
have applications at home, Scott, that I can send you that have been filled out. They date back quite a ways from different individuals who have filled out RAB applications multiple times, and I see a few heads nodding in here. So I know they have filled out applications themselves.
Okay, I mean, you have gone through the process this time. You have had the meeting, you have presented the information to us, and we have taken it up. That, as far as I know, since I've been here, that's the first time that process has occurred, and we are taking it seriously, and it is going to the commander. And there's literally nothing else I can do with that one. I mean,
Thank you.
Okay.
I filled out a RAB application years ago. Never came with it.
I've done it online and filled it out.
Well, there are requirements for it, and she did go through and get the book. We actually gave her the book of how to do it.
And it's gone out to
Yeah.
affected people, and there's
Right.
also a copy of the RAB handbook I brought to the Missouri Valley Public Library. And quite a few individuals in this room have a copy of it. If you don't have a copy of it, you can reach out to me and I'll email you the PDF that Scott Sawyer sent me.
Yeah, so anything from the past, I cannot speak to things that happened before I got here, but she has followed, she got the rules, has followed the handbook, and we are doing the best we can with that to make it work. Sir?
That e-redox method where you were penetrating ground using electrodes, there's no injectables with that method, you're digging wells, and if I remember right, there were 15-foot perimeter, 15-foot triangle, lays on the triangle. Seems pretty tiny. Is there a way to speed this up, assuming that's a viable path forward? You got a stable plume footprint. Can you not expand these silos and basically, drill 200-foot wells and just tattoo the ground all throughout that area and add power to those electrodes also?
Absolutely. In fact, some of the concepts we're working on as part of our feasibility study look just like that. So a full-scale application, for example, would target this entire area with electrodes, and we would basically just have a repeating pattern of those triangles throughout that entire area to reduce the contamination. But that would be part of a full-scale remedy. But that idea is exactly what we're looking at. So.
And would that take care of as big a vertical consideration?
Absolutely, yes. We believe the e-reox could be used not only in the shallow zone, but also in the intermediate fluvial zone as well.
Would you start on the perimeter and work your way in an inward spiral to try to encase the contamination?
One of the things we do as part of the feasibility study is look at different alternatives. And one of the alternatives could very well be containment coupled with source reduction. We also might look at complete plume remediation. And we have to look at sort of the pros and cons of taking those routes. Because obviously the more you do, the more it costs. And there's some, things to consider as far as that. But those are the exact things that we're looking at right now and trying to develop conceptual plans and coming up with costs for that. So you're right on the money with that.
The second question is a quick one. Is the larger aquifer underneath, the larger aquifer, is the dilution level adequate enough when it gets down to that level where it's not really a concern, or is that a huge concern? I'm kind of new to this conversation.
You're talking about the aquifer where the wells are located?
Expendable. Yeah, I mean, there's general area.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we try to let you know that the concentrations in the loess are significantly higher than what we're seeing in the fluvial, and there is some dilution aspect to it. There's a lot more groundwater flowing in that zone. But it's also a case where the source of the contamination is basically just very slowly working its way into that zone, so you have a lot more water with a slow source, and you end up with a lower concentration. Now, they're still above the drinking water standards, but we expect the concentrations that we're seeing to be fairly stable until we treat the plume. And our expectation, frankly, is if we can eliminate the source as part of the full-scale remedy, we should see the fluvial aquifer respond. So, and then we can decide whether we also active in that zone 2 to even speed it up further. So, but those are the kinds of things that we're trying to figure out as a feasibility study, because there's just lots of different permutations of the approach.
So we got one in the back standing first, and then I'll get you.
So,
Sorry.
just one question. These missile sites were all over the Midwest, the way I understand it, during the Cold War. So, is this like, is the Corps of Engineers fighting these all over South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa?
There were different missile types and different missile systems, and each one probably comes with its own environmental problems. The Atlas D that is here, being a liquid fueled rocket, was the one that required these particular degreasers to clean the fuel hoses and all that. So the Atlas D sites, all of the Atlas D sites probably have this problem. But I'm not familiar with all of them. Sorry, ma'am?
Yes, I would like to revisit where you showed the road with the 6 soil sites,
Okay.
the sampling sites. You mentioned when you were discussing it that the chances of having some contamination come up through the roads were slim to none. Then later down in your presentation, you spoke about going into basements, crawl spaces to achieve soil samples, specifically crawl spaces being better options than the solid basement. I was wondering how permeable is the road in comparison to a solid slab basement? And if the road is more permeable, are we going to plan to test these roads? Because, you know, if I'm walking out there, I don't want to be exposed to it.
Well, that's fair. Here, you need.
Mike, get over here. The PCBs and the VOCs behave very differently. The PCBs are not volatile almost at all. So the PCB risk is really a contact risk, and because it's below the road, there really is no way to complete that exposure pathway. So in a lot of cases, we have other sites of PCBs. If they're below roads and other foundations, we basically leave them alone. It's really safer to not move them. Whereas the VOCs do have the ability to evaporate or volatilize, and that's what we're looking at. And I do want to kind of comment on the question you asked earlier. What's triggering this investigation is the groundwater concentrations exceed a vapor intrusion screening level, so we don't have any vapor data up to this point. So what we're trying to figure out is it possible for the groundwater with the TCE, that's 50 or 60 feet below ground surface, to volatilize up into people's houses? And that's what this testing is going to be. And this testing that we're talking about is really only a few weeks long, and we'll have some answers really before the end of the year on that aspect.
Making sure nobody else spoke before me. My name is Jessica, just to be clear. So I do have another question. I live, I believe I measured it about 6.3 miles away from the center. So technically I'm out, right? The issue I have is specifically in the valley I live in, we have about a 90% cancer rate, different cancers. There was 2 in my family, my daughter at 14 and myself. So the question now has become, do I go ahead and pay the University of Iowa to run this test in addition to the glyphosates, because that's the secondary concern. We already know there's nitrates. If I were to come positive, how do I get a hold of you to share those test results? And when I do become positive, should I, actually I already know the answer, so it's kind of inflammatory, but should I tell my neighbors and ask them to also pay for their own testing?
You'll see my number and email will be on almost everything that you got tonight. If you, at 6 miles, you are never going to say that something is impossible.
Right.
I would say that it is unlikely.
Right.
If you pay for the test and you get that result back, then you bring that to us. And we will get with these guys and those guys and every other group of guys we got. We got a huge team. And we will find the path forward that makes sense.
My next question is, by any chance, did you bring any of the right of entry forms for some of us to go ahead and sign tonight?
I did not,
Okay.
and that is my bad. But again, you've got my email, you've got my number. Obviously, voicemail's not working. That is a problem. But if you email me and you want a right of entry, we will get it for you.
Okay.
So that is not a problem. Sir? Oh, no. Yes, please.
Earlier I talked to you, and you said that did you get a $500,000 grant for this, you said? Or from the government?
Who, us?
Yeah.
No, we don't get grants from the government because we're kind of are the government in that sense.
Well,
but the county,
for this.
the county and I don't know how that works exactly. There was a grant given. I heard from the county to test certain homes, but that may not be for everything. I'm not sure what the parameters are on that. We do get money for all the testing, and we have Matt Gresh in the back waving from.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify. So the DNR gives each county about $50,000 a year for private well testing. So I think that's probably what you're referring to.
They don't test for TCE, all they test is nitrates, and it has nothing to do with TCE. Nothing. Or any other chemicals that they're talking about. So you could have it tested 1,000,000 times, or free, you want to get into that program, it doesn't matter, it's not going to test anything that we're talking about here.
Yeah, the University of Iowa does have the capability to do the testing. What the lab man had actually asked is before we call to get the testing, to have the DNR get involved so that they could give a list of testing. Because he said, I could test for everything. But if we have somebody, boots on the soil and looking at the land and having a better idea of what they need to test for, it'll be a more conclusive test.
Matt from the DNR just made a statement about the free testing. Matt, can you repeat that, please?
So each county gets a certain amount of money every year for private well testing that generally covers bacteria and nitrates, as you know. If you want something else, you can ask the county sanitarian for that test, and then they can get it approved in the DNR. We do it hundreds of times a year. Things like that.
So you're saying that the county environmental administrator could do a TCE test if it was required? Is that what you're telling us?
They could,
or requested?
so the county, in order to be reimbursed for the test, the county can do it anytime they want. In order to get reimbursed for it, they need to ask the DNR, is this an appropriate test or not? And if we agree, they'll get reimbursed.
And how much is that test?
$51.
Yeah, it's not expensive.
All right, wait just 1 minute back there. You had a question earlier, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Back to animals.
Okay.
Anyway, there was a slide and it said something about a site 3. There was some testing done and there was no risk to cattle, and you had some pictures of some black Angus cows there. But my question is, was that TCE in the soil or the grass or the water that supposedly proved no risk? And then I'd like to know, I'd like to actually see the study.
Anybody familiar with that?
Yeah.
It's right up there.
Yeah, I'm not a risk assessor, but I do know the data that was pulled into the risk assessment for the eco risk assessment. Particularly for cattle, it was surface soil data and then groundwater data from what we call a Lot 1 well. It's periodically used for cattle drinking water.
What's Lot 1?
So I don't know if I can.
It's right when you go into.
Yeah, well, privacy issues, I don't.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I guess I'm back to, if that site didn't have any contamination in the well, what? I'm confused. Because then you're saying though that that particular area has contamination. I'm confused. Why would it not be contaminated for a water well for cattle, but contaminated for homes?
It depends on how deep
your well is.
Well, right.
I have a question, and it's in regards to Veronica's well. I have information here. This is a DNR management briefing 0425 doc. And the statement that went out in regards to Veronica's well was, the letter references information from the state veterinarian of Iowa, IDALS, who noted that there were no laws directly limiting Ms. Brantz, which is Veronica, from using the water for her cattle. But the juvenile cattle are likely impacted by TCE in similar ways to juvenile humans. And there could be liability involved in knowingly selling cattle with contamination to packing plants. DNR contamination sites forwarded the letter to USACE, the Army Corps, and returned a response to Ms. Brantz explaining that while the DNR is a signatory on site activities, the responsibility for the site is with the Corps. It is not known if the Corps has responded to her as of April 9th, 2025. Did they respond, Veronica?
I never got a response.
Now, we have talked about this, and I think that there's unfortunately limits to what the Army Corps of Engineers can do and what we are funded and authorized by Congress to do. We are purposed, we are given a charter to go out and try to protect the environment and human health. Cows are a different thing altogether, especially a cow that is used, that is part of the business. If the cow is a commodity, then it is not covered by what the Army Corps of Engineers does. I'm not saying it's fair, I'm not saying we should or should not do it, I'm just saying we are precluded by our own rules that are put on us by Congress. They decide what we do, and they have decided that that is not a part of our job. Are there other people that do that? I mean, the state should be involved in that. I don't really know exactly what the path forward is for that. But I know we are precluded from doing it. We're not allowed to go out and worry or study the cows. We're supposed to study the people. And, well, not study the people, but we're supposed to study the environment and get between the contamination and the people the best we can. That's why the houses have the GAC systems where you test positive, we won't start that GAC system. We are not allowed to install a GAC system that is simply for animals. And I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying that's the rules and that's what we have to play by. And I have no choice in that, yes.
Okay, Scott.
Yes.
Okay.
People came out, biologists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, had a nice conversation. I was told then, don't worry about it, even though these heifers will go into the human food chain. Okay, but I never got anything written. I never got anything written back. I just got the verbal statement that don't worry about it.
Well, it was myself and Isaac back there.
And the biologist.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Paige Kruger,
But
yes.
Scott, what I'm saying is I never got, that's why I just asked you a little
Okay.
bit about, can I have a copy of those findings?
Okay, I can, if you email me to remind me, when I get back to the office, those are pages out of one of our reports. And I can try and find those pages and email those to you. There is, unfortunately, in this case, and again, I'm not justifying it. I'm saying that's just the way it is. We cannot take action on business cattle. When we look to the health of an animal species, it would be because it is indigenous to an area and is an endangered species or something like that. But the cows are not, they are not native to the area and they're not endangered. So we really have no path forward with those. And it is unfortunate, but it is.
The GAC system that you speak about.
Yes.
Let's say I want to install it today. How do I go about that? Do you have plans where I could just let's say go to Home Depot and buy the components?
You want a GAC system on your house?
Let's just pretend.
Okay.
Let's just pretend.
Well, there's two things. There's one, yes, you can buy one yourself. That's not a problem. We provide them when somebody who is on our programs tests positive for TCE over the MCL. We will, we go, it's quite a paperwork shuffle, but it gets done very, very quickly. We provide a alternate drinking water source, be it a Culligan tap, thing in your house or bottled water until we can get that system set up. But that is not for just anybody, right? You have to be affected by this site. Now, if you want one yourself, Culligan in Missouri Valley can install one, and they are not. I think I just looked at one the other day, and I think the total for the whole thing was like $4,500.
Can you educate me on the parts of this system? Like, is there a carbon backwash? How many filtrations are there? Is it considered reverse osmosis?
There's plenty of different kinds of systems. If you're talking about the ones we install.
Yes. Are you allowed to tell me the components of it?
There's a picture?
Yes, there is a beautiful picture. I just can't read the words.
There you go. Does anybody want to go back when I talk about this?
So, okay, back to like what that filter we bought at Home. Well, tell who's making these rules and these timelines, like is this, what's the change demand, like is this coming right from house, like oversight committee, or like what level do people make contact or start knocking on doors?
Hey, sir, Lee again. It's nice to meet you. So I'm our FUD's counsel, and what I can tell you is that what Scott's referencing is CERCLA. Our team talked about it. CERCLA is a law passed by Congress in the 1980s. Congress decided that they didn't do a great job with it the first time, so they amended it, reauthorized it in '86, and that's where our program comes from. Some of the reasons why y'all are talking about, hey, we thought that we knew about this material here, it was in the 80s, what the heck? Our program didn't exist until October 17th, '86. We've been playing catch-up ever since. In terms of who makes the rules, Congress does. I will say that Scott is right. And normally I don't talk about this, but it's true. When Congress makes a policy call, our job at the execution level is to execute. And we follow that rule because that's what the democratic process did. If you are unhappy with it, the First Amendment guarantees you the ability to seek redress. And I will never tell you not to. What I will tell you is that y'all are more than allowed to give it to Scott all night long. But his answer on this is going to end up remaining the same because Congress made a call as the other parts of the executive branch. We have to fall in line. I will also say about Ms. Brandt, I actually got given over the cattle part, and I I'll be very honest with you that policy calls that we don't get to make are still policy calls we have to execute.
But is it the House, like, Oversight Committee, or they would be the ones that would grant, like, an exception to the timeline or something, or they would be the ones that would push it through?
If you were seeking a change to the federal law, you would need to get it passed by Congress and signed by the president, and the best place to start is to talk with your local representatives.
Which we have done. I contacted Randy Feaster's office. He got all excited about it. And then when I got contacted again by his office, his representative said, we talked to the Corps and they said not to worry about it, it was being taken care of. I also went to Congress, or to the two senators' offices, spoke with individuals, and never got an answer back, nothing, zero.
This is one of the top 10 sites in the entire United States, and if our own governor knows this and doesn't do anything, or none of our people do, it makes you feel helpless. Because, right, it's the top 10?
Yeah, and I absolutely feel that too, because trust me, we're in a similar boat, right? Do you think I want to stand here and say, I can't do that, I can't do that? That is not my desire at all. I would love to help everybody and get everything done, but I am constrained by the laws that exist. And the laws that exist are there because the people we put there make the laws. So all I can tell you is, right now, you can notice in this state, groundwater contamination is becoming an issue in this election. And so, you know, it's gaining attention, and hopefully that will spill over up into the federal halls, and things will change, but I cannot make them change. I only wish I could. This is not, I know it looks like I'm having a great time, but this is really not fun for me. So we are doing the best we can with the rules we have. I apologize that it's not what you want. It's not at the speed you'd like to see it. It's just not going to be, because I can't change the rules. We cannot change the rules. Yes?
I was wondering, I know, I understand yours is remediation, but as a county, what can we do on our end, on our part, to help with this situation, the people that live out there,
You know, I'm no expert on state politics, county, local, or any of that, but it seems like Matt Gresh is pretty amenable to working with counties, and you know, it's just going to have to be that partnership, state, county, and federal. Who's going to have to work together, especially with that testing program. That's something that's a lot more flexible for the county to work with the state on that than us. Our situation is not nearly as flexible as yours. Is there anything else? Yes?
I was at your first meeting.
Okay. On my first meeting or the first meeting?
When this first started.
Oh, okay, all right.
So it's been a long time. My first question was to him, how much money have you guys spent on good roads? Do you know how much you've spent?
I do not. I know, I honestly don't track it like that.
10, 15 million, 20 million.
That's probably a fair number.
Yeah, but my second question was, with that money, why couldn't you just put in rural water?
That was a study that was actually started. It is a lot more expensive than you think, and it's yeah.
After the meeting, one of your people came up and said, Mr. Peterson, that's the best thing we can do by putting in rural water.
It is not a terrible idea, but the government does not have the authority to put in
No, but they could.
rural water systems.
The money you spent, okay, I'm just saying.
The last estimate I saw,
That's rural water.
Yeah.
You can hook up at per job, and put it in there. And the reason I know is because I work for Caterpillar.
Right.
So I know how this rural water is.
Sure.
You can do the whole county. You go over to Nebraska, the 4 counties over there that I call, they're all rural water.
okay. Then I would recommend taking this up here.
So it's not that hard to do.
We can't do it. We don't have
I
the,
talked to the state
yeah,
representative, and they said it's a federal problem, okay? So I called Joni Erman,
okay.
nothing. I called Tom King, nothing. Their representatives were here. They said, oh my God, this is something else. Never heard anything from them. So this is the problem here.
Why aren't they here tonight? None of them are.
Yeah, that is, look, I can't explain how Congress works, how I honestly failed that in school, and I don't pay too much attention to that. But I do know that we are not allowed to just go around and put entire county water systems. So that's not going to be something we can do.
But you guys can help us with grants or something to get a little water started, district started.
We really don't have a grant program or anything like that. Again,
This is why I went to school for forever, is to help you study this. It's a wonderful question. I will say about the political question, I can't comment on that at all. I appreciate Scott's candor. Y'all can choose your political voice as you see fit. For grants and things like that, there are cooperative agreement authorities that we have. It's an entire different part of federal law. I sleep on the weekends because I do our compliance for environmental law. I also do our federal procurement, and I also do everything else. So I can't say it's very complicated, but the fact that it's complicated doesn't change the fact that what Scott is saying is right. So our program for formerly used defense sites generally doesn't do grants to local groups or local governments for that purpose. There may be other agencies that do. It just isn't our agency or this program.
What would you do if you lived in this neighborhood? I bet you'd be a whole different story.
I actually do live in the area. That was a Superfund site. But I will say I'm more than happy to talk with you about that off the mic.
I'm sure.
Can you estimate for us how much over the last 10 years this has cost?
I cannot estimate because I could be wildly wrong because I've only been on this 3 years. What happened the 7 years before that, I can't tell you. And when I came into this, the contract was already going, so I didn't really pay attention to that. It's not a trivial number, that I know, but I could not tell you what it was.
I just know.
Okay. I mean, sorry, if I knew, I would surely tell you. Is there any other, okay, he's been over a few minutes.
So I had a property that was a quarter mile south and a mile to the west of this. And I was reached out when this all started. They came tested my water, said that we were okay at that point. I since then have moved, and I shared with you guys where I was at now. It's in the green, but I'd still like to get it tested. But my question to you guys is, obviously, I mean, you've been doing a lot of tests, but you haven't been fixing the problem yet. Where is that plume's got to be moving. So is it moving more towards the west, northwest, or what direction is that going? Because there's other people in line. Obviously, there's a lot of people with problems and issues already, but there's other people out there that's outside these boundaries which it could be coming into. I think it'd be a fair question to find out exactly where you guys are seeing that that's coming.
Anybody want to answer that? You guys would.
Yeah, we'll just keep calling me up. The plumes, I mean, this has been around since the plume was probably started in the 1960s. PCE probably, those flame pits. It's been traveling along. It's looking like it's probably been where it's been since it's been detected. It's not, and we've seen that before and after again. Those slides in 2017 to 2025. It's stable. It's been in this pathway. It's a preferential pathway, so it's not really going to be moving out of that pathway because that's this path of least resistance. So it's going to be continuing along there. It's not necessarily going to be moving, veering side to side wildly. It's just not how these things work. They move, they set in place where they're going from their source area to their eventual receptors. They kind of stay in place unless there's like large scale, like industrial or agricultural large municipalities pulling some of these plumes into various different directions, and that's just The data's not showing that currently. That helps.
What does the drought have to do with part of that going down? Because you showed those one yellow.
Yeah, there's that one point where
Is that because the water table has dropped?
potentially there could be a reason. No, I don't know off the top of my head, no, but there could be a groundwater divide there, and that's instead of moving north or south. What's that?
Could that help the rest of our wells? And if all of a sudden the groundwater comes up 30 feet, that could change everybody's well.
The data doesn't show that that's the case right now. It's staying, it's still in that kind of, that area of Euclid Creek. It's where it's, where we're seeing those exceedances. And we've seen that since we've been studying this. So maybe in another 10 years we can look at that, but let's hopefully move on to a remedy before that.
Okay, so you I'm going to need your answer.
Okay.
You commented, or somebody did earlier, that if you treated the source, then that should take care of things and you don't have to worry about what's like farther north or downhill. But I'm thinking though, would that stop that what's left downhill from continuing to move and contaminate areas farther on to the north? You see what I'm saying? So even though there's not a feeder, because you've gotten rid of the TCE, what's left that you haven't gotten rid of, wouldn't that just continue to travel?
That is a complicated question. I did say that when you remove the source, it is common for the downgrading of plume to respond favorably to that. So that is one of the scenarios we're going to look at as part of the feasibility study. Once you remove the source, it does hamper the ability for the plume to continue to migrate. So our expectation, if that is one of the strategies we take, is that it would prevent the plume from continuing to migrate if it is even migrating right now. But what we need to do is look at the various strategies, including treating the entire plume at once versus selectively addressing portions of the area and see what makes the most sense for the remedy. But we oftentimes look at source removal and source treatment as a critical part of remediation at this site and many other sites that we deal with. So, does that help?
You don't know.
How many sites are you guys currently dealing with right now yourselves?
Oh, that's a good question. If you talk about me personally, this is it. As an organization, there's probably a bunch. I couldn't speak to that number. If anybody back there has an answer. How many sites like this are we currently working?
Just two total.
Too many.
I'm guessing like missile sites with this type of contamination.
First meeting that I was at, they said there were 100 of them across the United States.
That is probably accurate.
Well, when the paper started showing up, this stuff started showing up in the paper, somebody put out a map of all contaminated wells, and not wells, but contaminated sites across the United States.
Just missile sites or all contaminated? That's pretty much
You guys get
pretty dense.
that map for the next time you have a meeting and put that map up there too?
Well, we can surely try, Matt.
Yeah, I would volunteer, the Iowa DNR has an interactive map. You can click on to see all of these sites in Iowa. There's around 3,000 in Iowa. So, our website has a breakdown.
So 3,000 just in Iowa, that's pretty impressive. All right. There is also apparently a FUDS website, a federal Army Corps of Engineer FUDS program website with a outward-facing map with all of our projects nationwide. So the information's out there. I do not know it, but that information's out there. Is there anything else? Yes, Yana.
I just wanted to circle back to this system. Can you describe the parts of it?
Sure.
Yeah, like.
That one's kind of shiny. I am not the water expert.
Yeah, I'll do my best, neither am I, but, yeah, so, well, yeah, and obviously the system is designed for residential use. We get it through, so Culligan installs the systems, but we get our carbon vessels through Pelican. I think they actually recently changed their company name, but we get a slightly different carbon vessel than what Culligan provides, just based on experience, that it's more effective. But if you can see, I'm trying to follow it from the influent. Oh, you got one, yeah.
This is my system. The water comes out of the ground here, goes to the meter, comes up, goes through the first filter, comes around, goes to tank 1, tank 2, comes back around, hits the PEX, comes up and over, goes to the water softener.
What's the first filter?
That's just the
Is it sediment? Sediment, and what's the first silver tank?
Carbons.
So we just have a sediment filter and 2 carbons?
Yep.
Yes.
When this one goes bad, they move this one over and put one in its place.
So in my research, and also someone here also told me that you should by rights have a lever that you switch every 3 days to change the movement of the flow of water through the carbon, because if not, then you're not really doing much good. Does that make sense?
I really never heard of that. Are you talking about bypass mode or?
Jackson, are you
You're
here
switching-
still?
Jack.
Were you sleeping? Wake up!
The GAC system that I put in, I got it from US Water Systems. It has a backwash setting that comes in automatically. Basically what happens is as the water's flowing down through the media, it tends to strip the media and make a preferred channel, a preferred path that it starts to take, like any hillside does when water runs down it. And so when you back flush it, it throws everything back up, fluffs everything back up, and has a fresh media to start. That's what she referred to.
Yeah.
Similar to water softener.
Yes.
Yeah, so these do not have that backwash feature, but like I think, Scott, you may have mentioned it, that whenever we do see a detection in the second, the lag GAC vessel, then that's when the carbon is replaced. So they'll take the carbon from the lag GAC vessel, put new carbon in, and then switch the vessel with the new carbon into the lead position.
So is the water, like, mine, I'm constantly getting new carbon filters. Is the water safe to drink? What are you waiting for?
Yes, so, yeah, and I know which property you're talking about. We do have, I don't want to say, some challenges with the carbon replacements at your particular property, just because we see a lot of particulates, a lot of sediment entering from the influent. So it seems that the drinking water well has a lot of sediment in it. So we're always dealing with the fouling of the carbon vessels. I would say on the order of, what is it, maybe 3 to 4 months, maybe a little longer, we'll go without seeing breakthrough TCE from the lag GAC vessel at your home, but it's been pretty frequent that we see TCE breakthrough, that we're pretty routinely getting or changing the carbon out of the GAC vessel. So in large parts because we see a lot of sediment following the sediment filter and then getting into the carbon. And it creates a lot of channeling, a lot of sedimentation buildup, and then you don't get that surface area for the TCE to be treated by the carbon. Again, I think this is one of the less common situations that we're seeing where we've got a lot of carbon, or TCE breakthrough because of the sediment buildup.
I have a weird question.
Yeah.
When my system, I have a water softener system. When it backwashes, it dumps into my well, or I'm sorry, not into my well, into my septic. I don't know if I'm contaminated, but if I was, would my well then be contaminated, and where the gentleman who sucks my well every 2 years, and he spreads it, right, his septic, thank you so much, God bless you. So you guys were on with me, but I appreciate that. So when it goes into the septic, and my septic man comes and he goes and spreads it on his field, does he need to be aware that there's a possibility of TCE? Because essentially, if I don't know and I'm just flushing,
So you've got a treatment system, is that what you said?
I have a minor treatment system because when I developed cancer, we were thinking it was related to the nitrates.
And, okay, so you're the one that lives about 6 miles away?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you know, I guess I couldn't tell you because we don't have the data from your drinking water well. I mean, if it's potentially impacted, then there's that possibility that the water that's being discharged or that your guys taking to the field could be, but then, you know, you've got the volatilization factor.
When it
It's pretty quick. It's really quick, so, you know, I can't tell you how long it takes for the TCE to volatilize by the time it gets into the field, and then that act of discharging it also volatilizes it, so. Yeah, I mean, if you get your well tested, let Scott know on the results.
Yes, absolutely.
And we can go from there.
All right, I think that's about all we can do tonight before they're going to kick us out of here. Our commander would like to say one quick thing.
Hey, very quickly, like, because Mike can pick me up. Hey, you know, there's a reason that we have uniformed military officers that attend these events that are leadership, right? I am specialized in seeking out exceptions to policy, right? Finding out where the limits are, and, you know, I talked with my lawyer, and I don't mind making him mad, right? Because I like to push the limits, I'm trained in quick decision making, right? Which is obviously not what Scott described, okay? So I want to say, there is a human in the loop making decisions to the best of our legal ability, right? And sometimes we're comfortable leaning into, hey, this is in the gray area, let's see what we can do to get to action, okay? And so we are in those spaces. I don't like that Lee said that commanders, you know, are really super restricted in this area. I hate it. But I'm going to tell you, there's decisions that you may not see, right? We're pushing against those boundaries. We're trying to get to action. I have a bias for action as a military officer, right? And so it pains me to sit here and you know, talk about timelines that we do have constraints. We do have to follow law, but where we can seek exceptions and where we can bump into the gray areas, you know, we are trying to do that. So, anyways, thank you guys. Thanks for the passion. Thanks for the honesty. Have a good night.
Just out of curiosity,